guys, it's me Beau back once again with another cult movie review. In this video I will be reviewing the 1992 movie The Crying Game. Before we get into the review guys, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It goes a long way to help me build the channel. So The Crying Game from 1992 was written and directed by the Irish-born director Neil Jordan. The film starred actors Stephen Rea, Miranda Richardson and a very young Forest Whitaker. Now, I saw this movie for the first time about a year ago. I was fully aware of The Crying Game, but I'd never actually taken the time to sit down and actually watch it. It was only upon finding out Forest Whitaker was in the movie did my interests perk up. My first actual exposure to The Crying Game was actually through the film's soundtrack. The singer Boy George released a version of the song The Crying Game in conjunction with the film's release back in 1992. How does it go again? It's got some cool kind of jazzy intro to start. I don't know, something like that, you know. Anyways, a year later, in 1993, the Jim Carrey comedy Ace Ventura: Pet Detective was released. A film that parodied The Crying Game and used the Boy George track in the process. And like so many of my generation, I grew up watching Ace Ventura: Pet Detective on video. So I was indirectly exposed to The Crying Game without actually having seen it. So the film began in Ireland with Forest Whitaker's character, a British soldier called Jody, getting kidnapped by the IRA. Jody was being used in a prisoner exchange for an IRA fighter that the British Army were holding. We saw the hostage situation play out over a number of days, during which time Jody sparked up a friendship with one of his captors called Fergus, played by the actor Stephen Rea. Fergus was given the task to keep an eye on Jody and make sure he didn't escape. And so during their time together, the two exchanged personal stories about their lives and slowly gaining each other's trust. At first it was just small talk, but Jody would then go on to mention his special lover called Dill, played by actor Jay Davidson. If I remember correctly, he actually showed a picture of Dill that he took from his wallet. Jody knew that Fergus was no killer at heart, and so made him promise that in the event that he got killed, Fergus would go to London, track down Dill and protect her at all costs. I have to say, I really enjoyed the opening scenes between Fergus and Jody. I'd actually seen some people online criticize Whitaker's acting in this film, specifically criticizing Whitaker's attempt at a British accent. For me, Whitaker was solid, and I appreciated the actor taking on a challenging role like this one. And Stephen Rea in particular was brilliant as his character slowly warmed to his hostage. Fergus may have appreciated the IRA movement and its ideas, but it was clear that he wasn't cut out to be a part of it not fully. I mean, when you think about it, he was supposed to be this no-nonsense mercenary, but his various talks with Jodie over the course of days revealed a more kinder human side to him. Eventually, Fergus was tasked to execute Jodie after the prisoner exchange failed. Although he tried, Fergus just couldn't go through with it. He couldn't handle it. And this all resulted in Jodie escaping through the woods. Then in this sudden twist of fate, if you will, Jodie gets run over by an oncoming British Army vehicle. So before watching The Crying Game, I already knew ahead of time that Forrest Whitaker had a small role. So, by the time Fergus got him into the woods, I expected his death was imminent. But with how everything played out, it was still pretty shocking to see. And looking back, even though Fergus was ordered to kill Jodie, I'm glad the character never went through with it. I think having the character complicit with Jodie's death was more than enough of a burden for him to carry. Under the circumstances, Jodie and Fergus shouldn't have bonded as easily as they did. Yet, when this was conveyed on screen, the scenes were quite convincing. You really saw the guilt in Fergus's eyes as his mind ticked over trying to make sense of the situation. Yeah, just some fantastic work from Stephen Rea. So Fergus, distraught and panicked, left the IRA holdout and headed to London in search of Jodie's girlfriend, Dill. After scrolling through a couple of bars, Fergus ended up finding Dill, and soon the two began a relationship. Now, this obviously wasn't Fergus's plan when he left Ireland, but his feelings for Dill took over. I mean, to think that the character was guilt-ridden over his involvement with Jodie's death, then suddenly found himself romantically involved with Jodie's lover. You also had Dill wanting to know more about Jodie's death, and Fergus, while falling in love with Dill, just couldn't bring himself to tell the truth. The whole relationship angle was very intriguing, with Stephen Rea displaying his sublime acting abilities. Rea basically carried this movie and earned himself an Academy Award nomination in the process. Perhaps the most memorable scene in the film was the big plot twist we saw between Dill and Fergus. So the two were on the verge of getting intimate in Dill's apartment. One thing led to another, and two began to undress when Fergus discovered Dill was transgender. Fergus was rightfully shocked and began to puke, all the while Dill was saying, I thought you knew. So back in 1992, this transgender plot twist was a surprise, breaking taboos and, shocking the audience. But fast forward to the present. In today's world, where we see the ever-increasing degenerate behaviour and toxic lifestyles celebrated, with how the world is right now, with how everything turned out, the whole shock factor for The Crying Game is well and truly lost. I thought that Neil Jordan, incorporating that, inserting that into the story was a very interesting twist. So props to him for that. Given Fergus's reaction, while initially he was disgusted, overall, he took it pretty well. Given his IRA background, I wrongly assumed that Fergus may have resorted to violence, but he didn't. And with Fergus eventually coming round to the idea of Dill being trans, it did make me question whether Fergus was secretly gay or bisexual. I mean, there certainly wasn't any hints to suggest he was. I don't know, the whole thing was pretty, degenerate kind of stuff. It did make me wince a little bit, because this whole thing, this whole lifestyle, is basically, mental illness. And I just think that there is, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but this isn't really the be-all, end-all. It kind of is because of what's happened and the parodies and stuff, but really it was an idea that was inserted in, but there's a bigger story going on with the Crying Game, yet this whole trans thing kind of is the cloud over it that swallows everything up, and it kind of is the main focus when it really shouldn't be. So anyways, the terrorism angle is then picked up again with the character Jude, played by Miranda Richardson, an IRA member, tracking down Fergus in London. Jude wanted Fergus to assassinate a British judge, to which Fergus was pretty reluctant to take the job. The latter half of the film then becomes more of a thriller in parts. A botched assassination attempt, Dill shooting Jude in their apartment. It came across as if the movie studio wanted a more dramatic ending to the story that didn't really need it. I don't know, I guess it started to get a little bit kind of bombastic towards the end, when really I wish the story had remained more kind of grounded and more personal. When it comes to the film's look and aesthetic, The Crying Game is very much of its time. It's a movie that embraced the early 90s time period it was in. It didn't necessarily have an 80s vibe, yet it doesn't feel like a quintessential 90s movie. With the fashion and the hairstyles and everything, it's kind of somewhere in between, which resulted in the film having this unique vibe. Now, upon doing some research on The Crying Game for this review, I actually discovered the film's original title was The Soldier's Wife. Neil Jordan, who was a friend of the legendary director Stanley Kubrick, actually advised Jordan to make a change to the title, citing concerns audiences would be expecting a war movie. And well, you just got to say, Stanley Kubrick, he knew his stuff, because The Crying Game was a far superior title in my eyes. With the new name, it gave the audiences more intrigue into the movie itself. So good on Neil Jordan for taking Stanley Kubrick's advice. And so, dislikes for The Crying Game, 1992. My biggest dislike for this film would be the ending, with Dill visiting Fergus in prison. On paper, it totally made sense for it to happen, but in terms of execution, I just thought it was poor. I don't know, tonally the scene just fell off to me. The scene prior saw Fergus wipe Dill's fingerprints off the gun that they used to kill Jude as the police closed in. I understand Fergus showed he truly cared by taking the blame for Jude's death and covering up for Dill. but I just felt a more ambiguous ending would have suited better. The Crying Game dealt with some very adult themes, so to end the film with both characters happily chatting away during the prison visit, just it just didn't feel right to me. I don't know, it just felt forced, as if the film needed to end on a happy note. Now, I don't know this for sure, but I would gather studio interference played a part here. Personally, I would have had the film end with the shot of Fergus sitting on the chair in Dill's apartment. I remembered actually watching it for the first time and hoping that they were going to cut to the credits, but then they tagged on this happy prison visit scene. And so, ratings for The Crying Game, 1992. I'm going to be rating this movie a 5.5 out of 10. The Crying Game is a film that explores the complexities of human nature against a backdrop of political intrigue, race, and gender. There is a lot going on here, and it makes for a very interesting watch. I said it earlier, but I really did enjoy Forest Whitaker's role, albeit a small one. He's an underrated actor that doesn't always get the credit he deserves. Separately, Stephen Rea delivered a career-defining performance. I've seen the actor in a few projects over the years, but this would have to be my favourite role of his. And props to the director Neil Jordan for being able to pull such great performances from his actors. This is a highlight for British cinema, and thinking about it, this movie combined with 1985's My Beautiful Laundrette would make for a great double feature. And that's all from me today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed the review. If you have seen The Crying Game, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I'll be back very soon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.